Welcome to Blogs and Articles. In this series, we look at blog posts, articles online, and news stories about love, marriage, dating, and relationships. I'll provide some coaching questions for exploration, as I would for a client who is in this situation. Then finally, I'll provide my commentary at the end of just me being myself, unfiltered and unadulterated. Hi, I'm Janelle, the relationship coach behind The Successful Invisible. I help professional Black women who are 35 plus date and partner with more self-awareness and intentionality. Check out the links in the description box below to sign up for my next 5-day self-awareness and dating challenge. Remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. All right, I saw this article on Men's Journal, and I thought it would be a really cool one to cover for this series. So here we go. A study finds big differences between real-life singles and those depicted in TV and movies. As it turns out, personality type, not relationship status, determines a person's happiness. So let's jump into it. So a new study conducted is shaking up common misconceptions when it comes to single people, who are often portrayed in TV and movies as social butterflies, leading exciting lives and going on dates, or alternatively lonely and miserable because they're unable to find a partner. Instead, as it turns out, most singles are just fine with their relationship status, and many are that way by choice. So in the study recently published in the Personality and Social Psychology Bulletin, researchers at the University of Toronto sought to examine the link between personality traits and relationship status. And what they found was that how introverted or extroverted a person is had the tendency to align with whether that individual was single or in a relationship. In coming up with the findings, the team recruited over 1,800 participants between the ages of 20 and 59 who had either been single or in a relationship for at least 6 months. Participants then completed questionnaires that gauge personality traits, satisfaction with their relationship status, and both sexual and life satisfaction. Researchers then used the Big Five model of personality to assign traits to participants. Many psychologists believe that there are 5 basic types of personalities, which include extroversion, outgoing and high energy, agreeableness, compassion and respectful, conscientiousness, productive and dependable, neuroticism, anxious and depressed, and openness, curious and creative. Where participants fell on the introversion and extroversion scale was found to have a strong correlation to whether an individual was single or in a relationship. Little typo there. In other words, singles tended to be more introverted and those in relationships leaned extrovert. As marriage rates decline and more people live alone, our study contributes to a more complex picture of single lives that goes beyond the misleading stereotype of the miserable single person, said the study's lead author, Elaine Hone, a PhD candidate in the lab of Jeff McDonald and a professor in the university's Department of Psychology in the Faculty of Arts and Sciences. I just also want to point out real quick, segue, correlation does not mean causation. So keep that in mind when thinking about these results. There's a correlation between personality type and relationship status, but correlation is not causation. That doesn't mean because a person is introverted or extroverted, that is the root cause of whether they're single or partnered. All right, let's continue. So while on average, people in relationships are more satisfied with their lives than single people, there are many happy singles. Relationships don't play as big of a role in one's overall life satisfaction as you may think. Hone continued, we found that personality more than relationship status determines who is happy with their life and who isn't. Yes. That means other people can't make you happy. You have to do the work to keep you happy. A relationship cannot make you happy. Okay, back to the article. She said that often because the world caters to extroverts, introverts are often misrepresented as antisocial. The reality is, introverts enjoy their alone time and independence and can emotionally regulate, Hone explained, meaning they can manage their reactions to their feelings on their own. So an introvert may prefer being single more than being in a relationship. However, one stereotype holds true, and that extroverts are generally happier than introverts, regardless of relationship status. The very quality of being introverted might make it more difficult to find a partner because introverts tend to not find themselves in social situations as often. Not to mention, being in a relationship may cause introverts to become more extroverted by boosting their confidence and providing them with a wider social circle. Food for thought for anyone out there searching for the one. In the meantime, those looking for ways to cope with being single may focus on strengthening friendships or enjoying their freedom while it lasts. All right, now let's jump into some coaching questions that I often ask or would ask in a session with a client who was going through anything similar to the article that I just read. So grab a fresh pen and a notebook and answer these coaching questions truthfully and fully in order to kind of go deeper on your own journey to greater self awareness when it comes to dating and relationships. And as you know, first relationship, of course, that we need to get healthy around is a relationship with ourselves. So let's jump into these questions for reflection. Question 1. What implications do the findings from this study have for how society views and supports single individuals, especially considering the diversity in personality types among singles? So I think this study it wasn't tiny, but it by no means was big. It had 1,800 participants in it. I do like the fact that they had a mix of partnered, not partnered people, and we're looking at specific characteristics of the individuals in order to better understand the implications of the findings. So the small sample size to me kind of leads toward you can draw some smaller correlations, but I believe this would definitely have to be done on a bigger scale to really get the meat of, who's happier or how people are single versus partnered, and then, feeding in the different personality types, etc. But the implications so far, just from that small sample, are that, your personality is the biggest component of whether you're happy, either partnered or single. Question 2. How might understanding one's own position on the introversion extroversion scale help individuals make more informed decisions about their personal relationships and social interactions? This is an interesting way to look at it, but I think it's very important. A lot of people, from my experience as a coach, I say this, a lot of people are out here dating in an attempt to emulate what they see others do, either online, either friends and peers in their real life, whatever. And what other people are doing is 9 times out of 10 not the best fit for that person, at least not in the way that that person is executing. So if the approach to dating and relationships is emulating someone who is a very different personality type, is at a different place in life, has a different level of confidence, etc., than you have, it is going to definitely impact you or any dater in a very profound and probably not positive way. So understanding your own position when it comes to what you prefer before you start dating will help you have a higher chance of success. And I mean that from you will be a lot more in tune with yourself and ready to eject the garbage, or ready to, block and delete people who are not in alignment with you or who are just disrespectful. Like, you will have less tolerance and less willingness to put up with things that are not in alignment with you, because you know where you fall on that introversion extroversion scale, which is extremely important to know thyself when going into something like a relationship. And we only do healthy relationships over here. So that's that. Question 3. When considering the strong correlation found between personality traits and relationship status, how can singles use this information to enhance their satisfaction with life, whether or not they choose to pursue a relationship? So this is interesting because this goes back to what I was saying before. getting to know yourself on a very deep level and having a certain amount of self-awareness is imperative for any type of happiness. You can be in with the best partner in the best relationship, but if you aren't happy with you because you don't genuinely know who you are and you're not tapped in, you probably won't get a lot of satisfaction from that relationship. Well, the same holds true with just in general, being single as well. If you think a relationship is going to be this end all be all cure all, but the reality is you truly don't know yourself and don't know who you are or what you want, being single can seem probably miserable. So it is so important to understand yourself and your own personality traits, uh, to see what's best for you. Not everybody wants to be partner, not everybody wants to be single, but regardless of the season you're in, you should be enjoying your life. So I think it's there's a strong correlation between personality traits and relationship status, but I also think that people need to dig a little deeper and understand who they are before rushing to make a judgment about either one, if being single is best for them, if being partnered is best for them, what have you. Question 4. Where do misconceptions about the happiness of single people versus those in relationships come from? And how can this study help challenge those stereotypes? I think that often the misconception about happiness versus singleness, I believe that comes from advertising, honestly. I think in such a connected world, technology is one of it, social media is a big part of it, but even going back decades, we were always sold this advertising, I'm in the US, about like the perfect happy housewife and perfect family. And if you actually talk to many people who grew up in that era, what was portrayed in advertising about all of this happy housewife and perfect husband is not the reality of what the times were. So this image that people have about, people who are in relationships are happy and people who are single are miserable comes from advertising. It comes from media, it comes from movies, and it comes from social media. So being aware that a lot of our misconceptions about how people feel when they're either partnered or single is coming from intentional an intentional view that was fed to us through these different avenues. Question 5. How could this research influence the way introverts and extroverts approach dating and relationships, given the different ways these personality types find satisfaction and happiness? What I think, if people actually dig deeper into the findings of the study beyond this article, is people will start to tap into, my hope is, who they are. Like, where do they fall on the big, 5 personality trait scale, especially in terms of introversion and extroversion. You can do a Myers-Briggs test as well to kind of understand this better and take that knowledge and then start really applying that to your life in different areas. In terms of relationships, so say somebody scores more on the introverted side, they already recognize, okay, certain things probably aren't even in alignment, aren't even going to jive with my personality or things I like to do when it comes to meeting people. So introverts may be, let's just say, a little more comfortable meeting people or potential romantic prospects online, whereas somebody who is naturally more extroverted may like in real life events on the first go to meet someone because they like that FaceTime, they like that connection and that immediate ability to make an assessment, where introverts may enjoy taking their time, having that anonymity to some extent, and being able to kind of control the pace a little more. So having information like this and knowing yourself will really help when even determining the best approaches when it comes to dating and ways to start dating, like I said, online versus in real life events to start, and things of that nature. So it can really help people if they tap into it and dig into their own results and understand themselves a little more. Let's jump into one of my favorite parts of any of my blogs and article videos. And here I want to offer just my thoughts on what we've just read, how I see it translating in, my coaching and the wonderful people I coach with, and just any broader concepts that come up. Just my thoughts. Now, one of my thoughts about this is I think this article really gave voice to or articulated something based upon a study that had recently been done that many of us already know. I can definitely say, as a relationship coach, I come across and am able to interact with, peers, clients, potential clients, people in different situations, social situations, whether partnered or single, where they could seem like they're in the happiest marriage in the world, for instance, if they're partnered, and they're miserable. And it's not because of any external influence or abuse or anything like that. And then there are people who are single and floating and free and happy as a lark. So this study, especially coming from a professional Black woman who's actively dating, and I work with single professional Black women who are either actively dating or want to get back into actively dating, or even want to become better and more intentional about dating for serious relationships. It's interesting that this came out, but I think this gave voice to what all of us already knew. We are sold this idea, like I said in the question I was discussing earlier, the last question, we're sold this through advertising. We're sold this through social media that partnered people are happy and single people are miserable. We're sold these through these rom-coms, especially like the late 90s, early 2000 ones. We're sold this idea. And now in the current socio-political environment, this is being pushed further through a lot of different things we're seeing through, debates about women's rights, body autonomy, the rise of the red pill manosphere content. So we're constantly being pressed and told that we're only happy when we're with someone else. Now, there's definitely a sinister intent behind that. But from the perspective of this article, I want to stay from that, looking at it from that view. It's really important for people to understand themselves. And that's the biggest thing. A lot of people who are also trying to push this rhetoric, just one more spin the block on that point on that, about, women are only happy when they're this way. They themselves aren't happy people. And like I said, they have ulterior motives to want to oppress, harm, and abuse women in whatever form that takes. So a lot of people who are pushing that narrative are miserable people. They wouldn't make good partners anyway. And there are a lot of women who are just out here, and I say women, but I should say people, but who are just living their life, doing their thing, and they're okay. And I'm going to talk about this in probably another, video or post I make about the 4B movement. And that's why something such as the 4B movement just is a total mind fork for some people, especially people who lean heavily into this ideology that women can't be happy unless they're in service to a man and kids, and this very patriarchal, traditional gender role, being oppressed, lacking the ability to make their own decisions and have their own voice. It really blows a lot of people's minds that that's possible. And I don't foresee that changing for a while, but the only way that this overall perception is going to change if individuals, a greater amount, it's never going to be everybody, a greater amount of individuals really takes a step back and starts to know themselves and starts to recognize the things that play around them and starts to understand that a lot of things that are being pushed on them through media, social media, advertising, etc., what is the goal or the motive behind it? And where are they at? And are they genuinely happy in relationships, etc.? So I really like this debunking the myth that those of us who are in this space of dating, partnering, meeting new people, assessing somebody's suitability and compatibility, we already know that, because I can say for myself and for many of the clients I work for, I'm not a miserable person, not partnered. I'm not a miserable person, single. And I cannot recall, maybe one time, working with someone, and I didn't end up working with this particular client because I felt I wasn't the best service provider for them. And I was very honest. That's why we have discovery calls about that. Other than maybe that one time, I never felt that, and I still don't feel that the clients I work with are just, oh, they're egging to get in a relationship because they're so miserable single. They're not. It's like, hey, I've done these things and I would like this also in my life, kind of thing. And when you approach things with that energy and with that type of positivity and openness, not saying we don't have some self-work things to do. Absolutely. That's why I love what I do. But it's not coming from a point of I'm miserable and I'm not fulfilled without a partner. So debunking this myth and letting it be known that it has a lot to do with personality traits as well was helpful. I can't say I fully agree with the last bit about introverts versus extroverts being happier. I feel there's a lot of nuance to it that wasn't necessarily covered in the article, but maybe covered in the actual study, and I'd have to go back. But yeah, those are just my thoughts. I really appreciate any article that's really debunking this myth about single versus partnered people, especially when it comes to speaking about women, because, a lot of stuff we see today in all aspects of life, it's just smoke and mirrors, and you can't believe it just because somebody is trying to sell you a certain narrative. Thank you for joining me today for this episode of Blogs and Articles. Remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Check out the links in the description box below to sign up for my next 5-day self-awareness and dating challenge. Also, check out my podcast, The Successful Invisible. Next season publishing soon on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Until next time, this is your coach, Jay Nell. Stay empowered and see you on the next article or blog post.